There are some, I used to have a whole bunch, but one time I was gone, and about 7 of my watches were stolen.
I believe we are.
Oh, that's why.
Good evening. Welcome to the August 12th Muscatine Community School District Board of Education. Madam Secretary, would you take roll and determine a quorum, please?
You bet. Director DeVete,
Here.
Drava,
Here.
Finn,
Here.
Mather,
Here.
McCarter,
Here.
Neighbor,
Here.
Wildermuth.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I'd like to welcome all of our visitors that are with us this evening and any media representatives that we have. We appreciate you joining our meeting. Our next section of our agenda is our Citizen Speaks portion of the agenda. This is where any citizen is invited to address the board. We ask that you state your name and address for the record. We also ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. And please note that the board is not able to respond to your comments as per our board policy, but are happy to hear anyone that might want to address the board. We have a timer set up this evening and it's on the screen. I know 3 minutes can go fast when you're sharing information that you feel passionate about, so we'll keep the timer on the screen and then you'll be able to see when your time is up. So if anyone would like to address the board, now would be the time to step to the podium.
I am Dan Clark, 1221 Mulberry Avenue. I spoke to you in the June meeting advocating the naming of the combined middle schools for Susan Clark, who was named in the Clark versus Board of Education lawsuit. Iowa Supreme Court ruling, 1868, landmark, nationally important. This evening, I bring you regrets from Kent Sissel, who lives in the Alexander Clark family house, who's been there for many, many years. He restored it, he lives in it. He's well up in his 70s. He wanted to thank each of you who took the time to listen to him on the telephone or respond to his request that he wasn't able to be part of an internet feedback process, but he did feel that he was heard, and I think he's feeling optimistic from that. In these modern times, we do things differently, quickly, digitally, social media, and so on. And so today, the Voice of Muscatine posted something on Facebook, and the social media was busy talking about this topic. I got involved a little bit. I answered a few people. I expect to do that going forward. What I wanted to tell you tonight was that after our June presentations, one of the board members sent me a note and said, you know, the Susan Clark idea is interesting, but it's hard to find information about Susan Clark. Have you thought of creating a Wikipedia page? And that's not something I'd thought of. I've been researching this story and writing about it in various ways for about 15 years, and I hadn't paid much attention to Wikipedia. Now I am a fully qualified Wikipedia editor and page creator. I wanted to say that all day long on Facebook I was reading people saying, just call it Muscatine, keep it simple. Person after person said, keep it simple. And I started thinking, what does keep it simple mean? That we don't want to know about it, think about it? Somebody said, well, we don't name our other schools for people, and somebody said, yeah, actually we do. You know, we have a Franklin, Grant, am I going to recite them right? Madison, McKinley, who am I leaving out? Jefferson. Who were these people? Do our students learn the significance of their school names, or should they? So anyway, I have started working on this Wikipedia project. It is very difficult. It's run by scholars around the world who have the most rigorous rubric you ever saw. And so my first attempt at the Susan Clark page has not been approved. I have 6 months to get it right to be accepted. But as a qualified editor, I have been editing the Wikipedia page for Alexander Clark. There was a lot of stuff that needed fixing there, and I have a lot more to do, and it links to the Clark versus Board of Education of Muscatine page, and we're fixing on that. So thank you for your attention, and I have time left. I yield my time to...
Thank you, Dan.
Do you want to pass this down, Randy? Hello, I'm Sandy Stanley. I live here in Muscatine, 918 Acorn Lane. I'm speaking tonight in support of naming the junior high school after Susan Clark. I assume the school board knows the history of how in 1868, Alexander Clark and his brave daughter Susan led a successful effort through the Iowa Supreme Court to desegregate the Muscatine schools and thus Iowa schools. Iowa became the first state in the nation to desegregate schools, a first in equality no other place can claim. Muscatine has something special and distinctive that no other town, city, or state or county in America can claim. Muscatine was first in the nation to desegregate schools thanks to Alexander Clark and his young daughter Susan. Much is known about it, and I'm going to repeat some of what Dan said here. Much is known about Alexander Clark, and more will be known in the future as research is ongoing. While less is known about Susan Clark, researchers are unearthing interesting material of her persistent courage working in her community. Historically, women, and particularly women of color, were sidelined or left out of history. In the future, we will learn more about this brave woman. This is something Muscatine should display proudly. What better way to demonstrate that pride than to have the name Susan Clark on the new junior high school? We should be proud of our history. We were way ahead of the nation when it came to equality, so why not showcase that pride in naming the new junior high school after her? I understand naming the school Muscatine Junior High or something similar is being considered. If the school is named after Susan Clark, it will of course be a Muscatine school. To name it Muscatine Junior High is quite unoriginal when we have the choice of naming it after Susan Clark. To name this particular school after Susan Clark at this particular time is probably our best opportunity. If we let this opening pass and learn in the future that another school has chosen her name, then we should have been the first due to her history right here. We will be disappointed at the opportunity squandered. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight on this important subject.
Thank you, Sandy.
Good evening. My name is Annette Hofland, and I live at 1914 Mulberry Avenue. My husband Jack and I have been living in Muscatine for more than 25 years, and I teach in the Muscatine Schools District and have done so for more than 15 years. I am honored to be here tonight to voice my support for the naming of our junior high school after Susan Clark. As Stanley has already mentioned, the Clark v. Board of Directors was the first successful desegregation case in the nation and is cited in Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, 1954. After that ruling, in 1868, Susan Clark attended a Muscatine public school. We can't know the hardships she must have endured, but in spite of these challenges, and most assuredly with full understanding of the import of her actions, Susan Clark, at the age of 16, graduated with honors from Muscatine High School in 1871. She was a Muskie. And yet, few people in Muscatine have heard of Susan Clark. In her adult years, Susan Clark married the Reverend Richard Hawley, and the couple moved to Cedar Rapids. Mrs. Susan V. Hawley was an accomplished dressmaker who owned her own shop. She was active in her community, serving as treasurer of the One More Effort Club and president of the JSY Club. As further testament to her character, her sense of service, and her bravery, when she was a passenger on a train involved in a wreck, the Cedar Rapids Weekly Gazette reported in 1898, Mrs. S.V. Hawley, a colored woman, promptly left her perilous position and ministered to the injured. Susan Clark is mentioned in little-known stories of Muscatine. It is time for Susan Clark to be recognized and honored for her bravery. Susan Clark's contribution to Muscatine, to Iowa, and to the United States should no longer be a little-known story. By naming our junior high after Susan Clark, our children will know that we value these qualities in our youth. What better message can we send our children? Thank you.
Thank you, Annette.
Good evening. My name is Dana Wright, 13111 311th Street West, Illinois City, Illinois. I contacted the board by email with information about the circumstances of my resignation from my teaching position in the district. I wanted to speak very briefly, just introduce myself to each of you and to say a few words. I am here this evening with my family, my husband and my 2 daughters, to observe this session because you, the board, will be making some decisions tonight that will greatly affect us as a family. I stand before you as a teacher, but first and foremost, I am a mother. I made the decision to resign from the Muscatine School District after significant thought and very careful consideration. Ultimately, I have to put the interests of my family first, and my employment in the district negatively impacted my ability to do just that. I have no intention of rehashing my remarks that I shared with each of you by way of email. I do, however, kindly reiterate that I respectfully request you accept my resignation at this time. Lastly, I would, of course, like to take this opportunity to thank you, the board, and each of you individually for your time and consideration regarding this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Okay. Our next item on the agenda under our board targets and goals is the report card to the community.
And I'll give some, try and give some context to some of the information that you're going to be receiving, and there's quite a bit there. So as we were getting ready, preparing this, it reminded me of a long car trip I took with my kids from Omaha to Galveston, Texas. And any of you that have taken a long car trip with small kids, it can be quite a journey. And I'll never forget, we were stopped in Oklahoma City, and the kids were really complaining about, this is such a long trip, when are we going to get there? I can't believe it's taking so long. And I had to try and remind them, but look how far we've gone. And that's a little bit like our data story. What you're going to see is we have not reached the end of our journey. We still have a lot of work to do, but I think it's really important to recognize the work that our teachers and principals have done to get us to where we are at. We have a lot of community challenges, and some of the community challenges we have directly impact some of the most important measurements we have. When you look at graduation rate, dropout rates, the Iowa assessment, ACT, any number of things, some of the factors that influence that are outside of the school's capacity. For instance, poverty. We have a large number of kids that come to us in poverty. As a matter of fact, Alicia Eggers told me this spring we have over 2,000 of our kids on free lunch that get a free lunch without ever having to fill out a form because they qualify as homeless or wards of the state or receiving other benefits. So what does that mean? Because that gets thrown out there a lot. Well, we know that a kid that comes to us from poverty starts kindergarten with 10,000 fewer words than a student that doesn't come from poverty. They've had a 30 million word gap in the amount of conversation they've heard and participated in. And what does all those things mean? Well, it delays the executive functions in the brain that are absolutely crucial for academic achievement. Things like working memory, mental flexibility, and self-control. all are part of those executive functions that kids in poverty, and this is not just me saying, this is the American Medical Association, that this is a serious situation that definitely affects how they perform in school. We have so many kids come to us with so many stressors. We have a number of our students are homeless. They go from couch to couch, home to home, relative to relative. We have a large number of our students have incarcerated parents. We are constantly dealing with food security, clothing issues, lack of clothing, clean clothing. And we are seeing more and more, and we are not necessarily unique in this. We're seeing more and more emotional and mental health issues. And part of the data presentation will show what some of the things we're doing to address those. But those things affect how a kid is going to perform in school. And then the third challenge that confronts us, and we're making some headway, but not nearly enough is in attendance. And this is one of the most crucial things, because if a kid isn't at school, we simply cannot teach them. We cannot affect it if they aren't there. About 30% of our high school students miss about a month of school a year. 20% of our students K-12 miss a minimum of a month of school a year. And what the research would say, if you're going to miss that much school, you're almost automatically a year behind. And if you compound that, you can see the problem. Well, missing those kind of days, you combine that, you combine effects of poverty, it makes it really difficult for us to perform as well as we'd like on some of the assessments we have. The two that are most impacted by that is the ACT and the Iowa test, primarily because they're devised around background experiences is really going to have a huge impact on a student's performance on that. The more experiences they've had out of school, the more environmental advantages they had, they're going to do better. The two that are most affected by the quality of the teacher and the quality of the curriculum is our FAST test, which looks at reading fluency, and our AP scores. And I would want everyone to know, because I've heard somebody say, well, the AP scores don't count because every teacher makes their own. AP tests are national tests. Everybody takes the same one. I don't care what state you're in, what city you're in. They all take the same one. It is the same. It's a national test that every student takes. So it has nothing to do with being easier because a teacher made it easier. And the FAST test is also a state test that is standardized. So you're going to hear a lot of information tonight. And I want you, as you're seeing and hearing these data points, I want you to look at those. There's going to be those that you can really celebrate and say, boy, we are coming a long ways. There are some of those that we're going to say, we need to go a lot farther. And in some of those, we're going to have to ask the question, how are we going to go a little bit farther with the help of the community? Because we are not going to solve these things alone. So as we look at these, I'm really excited for the information to be shared, and Mike and Becky are going to go through these. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, and then at the end we'll try and wrap this up. So, Mike?
Thanks, Dr. Raby. Good evening. Tonight, Becky, Tom, and I are really excited to share out our district information and kind of how it's evolved and improved over the last decade. Besides showcasing our improvements, we're also going to point out, like Jerry mentioned, some of the community challenges the district currently faces and the impact these challenges have on our student achievement. We have a lot of data tonight to share out, so I'm going to kind of apologize in advance for it's going to be kind of a lengthy presentation, so I apologize for that. But let's start first with graduation rate. 10 years ago, the state of Iowa went, which I think was a really good move, is they went to a 4-year cohort graduation rate. Prior to that, we really didn't have accurate graduation rates for a variety of reasons. What a four-year cohort rate is that it takes a student that enters as a freshman, and each freshman has a number that can be tracked all the way through state. And so if they leave that school, it's also tracked and so forth. So you take the number of your incoming freshmen, and then you count how many are graduating after 4 years, and that's your graduation rate. It's very accurate now. It's a great system. Like I said, even if students go between school districts, it tracks that. So it's not counted against us if a student transfers to another district. So When we look at our graduation rate, I think we have a lot to be excited about. You can see that since the inception of the new standard, we've gone up 10% over the last 10 years, from 74 to 84%. I think some other critical things is that when you look at some of our subgroups, you can see our subgroups, some of our larger subgroups like special ed and free and reduced numbers have also gone up pretty dramatically during that time. You can see, like, for example, free and reduced going from 53 to 73%, and then special ed going from 45 to 62%. So those are significant increases as well. So when we look at our overall, we've never been at a higher rate than we are currently for graduation rate. But kind of like what Jerry said is that we also recognize we have a ways to go. We need to improve that score. The state average is around 91%, so we need to improve this. We're making a lot of progress, but we have a long ways to go yet. The other thing that I would draw the board's attention to is the decrease in our dropout rate. Our dropout rate is decreased about 2.5 to 3% over that 10-year period. A good way of looking at dropout rate when you compare it to graduation rate is dropout rate is an annual and graduation rate is a 4-year. So dropout rate is how many students start in your building, and then you look at how many are in your building at the end of the school year, and that's your dropout rate. So if you have, say, 1,500 students, like we do, and 100 students leave during that year, then that becomes your dropout rate, whatever percent that is of that 1,500. So it's an annual rather than a 4-year. So you're always constantly looking at what your dropout rate is and also what your graduation rate is. And obviously, dropout rate dramatically impacts your graduation rate. The more dropouts you have, the lower your graduation rate's going to be. So we have a lot to be excited about, I think, with our graduation rate. I'm going to go on now and talk a little bit about free and reduced. But I thought I'd kind of draw your attention first to, the upcoming slide's going to illustrate a dramatic increase in our free and reduced numbers over the past decade and a half. But I really think this quote captures nicely the impact increasing poverty has, not only on communities, but on school systems as well. So I thought I'd just read this quickly as children living in poverty have lower scores on standardized tests of academic achievement, poorer grades in school, and lower educational attainment. The effect on these academic measures begin in early childhood with consequences persisting through adulthood. And that's from the American Medical Association. And so we understand the impact that has, and then when you start looking at, on our next slide, our numbers of free reduced, you can see that our community has dramatically changed in the last decade and a half. In 2002, we were at 30% free and reduced. Now, last year, we were at 51.6% free and reduced. When you take the number of students that is increased from 1,636 to 2,416, that's a 48% increase in our free and reduced numbers. You also can look at, we're currently at elementary, which might surprise some people. 59% of our elementaries qualify for free and reduced, our students, and 50% of our secondary students qualify for free and reduced. I think one telling statistic on this is that when you go back to 2002 and you see that 30% was the average, we currently do not have one building below 33%. So we don't even have a building at 30% anymore, and our highest free and reduced building is at 85%, with our average roughly around in the 50s. So most of our buildings probably are at the 50 percentile. So you can kind of see how our community has changed and why this community issue really does impact our academics. But one of the things I guess I'm really proud of is that our teachers, they're amazing. And when you look at how our demographics has changed, you can kind of see some of the information I'm going to share and Becky's going to share. You can see that not only have we maintained in a lot of areas our academic data, we've actually improved it. And so I think as a district, I give the credit to our leaders, to our staff, that they have made a huge difference, even though we have a very dramatically different system. So with that, I'll go on to chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism, Jerry talked about the huge impact that has. It's really a community problem which dramatically impacts the performance rates of students in districts. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how that does. But our district has designated a lot of resources to kind of combat chronic absenteeism. But the reality is it's a community issue. And so we've worked really closely with a lot of community organizations to help try to improve our chronic absentee rate. And so this last year, we did have improvement. We increased or decreased our chronic absentee rate by 7.4%. You can also see that we decreased it at the elementary level at 14%. What I'm excited about with that is 14% reduction in elementary. You hope that kind of transcends then to the secondary level. If you can get them on track at the elementary, you hope that that can continue once they go to secondary. But here are some of the, I think, to me, some of the startling statistics about our chronic absentee in our community is you have, right now, 814 students have missed a minimum of 1 month, which is 17% of our student population. And so you start thinking, okay, you have 17% of your student population missing at least 1 month or more. What impact does that have? And kind of, again, what Jerry said, the first statistic is that if you're chronically absent, you probably are going to be 1 full year behind in learning. But what's also scary, the next one is that if you're 15%, which we have a lot of students that are, you could be up to 2 years behind in learning. Then students who miss, and I think this is very telling about standardized test scores, students who miss 3 or more days during the month prior to standardized testing will on average score 12 to 18 points lower, and also over 29%, most of them will not reach benchmark. Only 29% have the potential of reaching benchmark. Then you start compounding all that, you get to this next one, where it talks about graduation rate and dropout rate. We oftentimes say, well, you know, let's do all these things at the high school level to help a student graduate or make sure they don't drop out. But our statistics would show that you can tell a dropout, a potential dropout by the time they get to 3rd grade. If that student is chronically absent as a kindergarten and 1st grader, they're already 2 years behind in that critical 3rd grade test. And then if they continue that by 6th grade, the chances of them dropping out increase dramatically. So at a very young age, you can tell whether a student's going to be a dropout or graduate. And so that's why we really need to be proactive at the lower levels as well. And then this last statistic, and all these statistics are from attendanceworks.org, which most districts in the country use. And I encourage the board, if you have an interest in finding out more, to look that up because it has great information about attendance. It has a lot of good stuff on it. And so students, the last one I'll read to you, students who live in communities with high poverty rates are 4 times higher or more likely to be chronically absent, often for reasons beyond their control, such as unsustainable housing, unsustainable or unreliable transportation, or lack of access to health care. And in a few minutes, Becky's going to talk about how all the resources we've added in our district to help alleviate some of those issues. And we really are proud of that as far as being kind of one of the leaders in our state, but we have to continue to do more. So with that, chronic absenteeism, I'll go on to advanced placement. Advanced placement, as the board knows, we were recognized this year from the University of Iowa. The Bell and Blank Center is kind of your mecca for gifted and talented advanced placement and so forth. And they recognized our school district. We're the only school district in Iowa that was recognized, and only a few have been recognized throughout the state as a school of distinction. And on top of that, when you look at the growth that we've seen in AP, we currently, this past year, we're 9th in the state, ranked 9th. We weren't even close to being ranked 5 years ago. We're ranked 9th now.
What does that mean to be ranked?
I'll kind of, when I get the next slide, I'll go through that, Nathan. It's a great question. And on top of that we talk a lot about what is going to attract families to our community. Well, I guarantee you one of the top things that people look for is how you do on your AP, how many courses you offer AP, those type of things. So I think it is a selling card for our community, and it also, again, illustrates just how amazing our kids are to go from not even being ranked to number 9 in the whole state of Iowa. The next slide kind of shows the growth, and see if I answer this, Nathan, or not, is that our district AP offerings, about 5 years ago, we started to more dramatically increase that. We also added pre-AP in 2017 at our 5th grade through 11th grade levels, the first district in Iowa to do that. And here's some of the results we've seen. The number of students involved in AP has increased by over 200 students. So we've gone in 5 years from 123 to 350, but we also have increased our tests from 143 to 594. And when you think about 350, think about that's 25% of our students at the high school, almost 25% are taking an AP course. Who would have ever thought 5 years ago we would have 25% of our students? And then the number of courses they're taking. But then what I look for is not so much how many courses, how many students are taking it, but how well they're doing on it. Because if they're not doing well on it, then you have to address that issue. But when you look at our numbers, and this is, again, we have truly amazing teachers and kids, is that our numbers have gone from 2.57 when we only had 143 tests taken. So that was the best, your top students. Now we have 594, and our average is significantly higher. And that's part of the reason we were recognized, as a school of distinction, is because not only the number of tests, but that the fact that our scores have gone up so much.
Do we track how many college credits, and obviously it depends
Yeah.
on the school they're going to, but how many college credits or semesters or what have you, our AP testing regime has saved people?
Yeah, you're saying how many credit hours have they gotten in college?
Exactly.
For AP. We don't have the exact numbers
Sure.
as far as what that is. I would say the majority of colleges will give credit for AP in one of two ways. They'll either give it in their major, or it's more likely schools give it as an elective credit. They may not give it in their major. So most of the time, schools will give credit for anything 3 or above, a score of 3 or above.
So yeah, if we could say something like 300 kids got a 3 or above, saving, I don't know, 3 hours or something a
Yeah.
semester, we could. That's money. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and then correlate that to the cost of a course at the U of I or a community college. We could say,
Yeah.
this is how much money
Yeah.
our students have saved.
And we actually, I didn't bring the slide tonight, but I have a slide that tracks that each year, how many more students have gotten a 3 or more.
Right.
And it's increased dramatically. We could easily, obviously colleges cost different amounts.
Sure.
But we could certainly come up with a monetary label to that.
Right, and I think it's important not just to characterize it in terms of money, but time and, earning potential but that would be a start, I think, to quantify it.
Yeah, I agree. And, there's so many things, and this is why I respect so much, Jerry's leadership and the board's leadership on this is that, requiring or paying for all the AP exams, you're really eliminating the economic barrier. We also do that with the ACT. We're one of the few school districts in Iowa that pay for the ACT. It eliminates a huge economic barrier for our kids. Just recently, we're paying for school supplies, a large portion of school supplies, for registration fees. So I'm really proud to be part of a district that is so proactive, seeing the changes in our demographics to really help students even that level field. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Becky, and she's going to talk a little bit about services that we've increased to address some of the poverty and attendance issues.
Mike, before
Oh, sure.
before you leave.
Yeah.
One of the things that I would like to ask is that 59% of the elementary and 50% of secondary.
Yeah.
It is a common belief that oftentimes the secondary percentage is lower because when you get there, there's more peer pressure not to be identified as free and reduced.
Yeah.
Do we see that
Yes.
in our district here? And with that, what would you suggest that we could do to help take away the stigma of that I'm free and reduced and my buddies aren't?
Right. Great question. To answer your question, we absolutely do see underreporting at the secondary compared to the elementary. We know that number's higher, free and reduced. I think one variable that the reason they don't is the one you're stating, Randy, as far as the stigma. I think another is high school students start getting jobs, they start having more, so that might cause some of it. To answer your question fully, if we could ever get to the point of what we're doing, which I think is great at some of our elementaries where we pay for all meals, if we could ever get that done at the secondary level, I think that would take away the stigma of it, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So, Mike, before you go, I have one question as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned 84 was the 84% graduation rate,
Yeah.
and state average was 91.
Yes.
Do you know where 84 puts us ranking-wise, top 50%? Well, it'd be below the 50%, but
It would be below.
where do we
50.
rank? Do you know?
Yeah, they don't rank as far as out of 335 districts where we rank, so I don't know that. But we would not be in the top 50%.
Right, sure.
One interesting, I think, thing to do would be to compare our school district, our size, to other school districts, our size.
That's where I was going with my
Yeah.
second question, which is how
I
do we
think-
compare with schools similar to ours?
And you could even take it one step further. You could similar demographics, and I
yes.
think that would be a very interesting. We have done that with ACT, and we look very favorably when we do that. So I could do that, Aaron. I could look at that and kind of
That'd be
get that
helpful.
to you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, as Mike said before, our teachers and administrators work very hard every single day, and they are constantly monitoring academics. But two variables that impact student learning are poverty and attendance. This next slide will address some additional community challenges. I know you did. You're okay.
Sorry about that.
Perfect. Nope. Thank you. So our district is addressing these tough community challenges and are leading the state in many areas, as you can see on this slide. We've increased counselors from 11.5 to 17 full-time counselors. Partnering with Trinity has also been a valuable resource in our schools. Due to the success and increasing caseloads, we've added a fourth resource navigator to our team. An additional school nurse has also been added as well, so that all buildings have nursing coverage throughout the day. The addition of having on-site therapists that work in our schools alongside with our social workers and psychologists, our students have daily access to these support in addressing these high-need areas. As Jerry mentioned, food insecurity is a vital piece of nourishment and development amongst our kids, which is why our district partners with the local food bank so that monthly distribution of fresh meats, fruits, and vegetables are given to our families free of charge. In fact, the next distribution is tomorrow night in the back parking lot of the high school from 4 to 6 o'clock. We also know that schools can't do this alone, and that all of these combined have had a tremendous impact on directly supporting our students and our families.
So Becky, as a resource navigator, a social worker, what does the resource navigator do?
So a resource navigator is kind of a combo of many different things. They act as a liaison for our teachers, principals, in behalf of families. So they truly, just like the title says, they connect families with resources. Could be insurance, could be food, could be housing, could be academics in the school. So they range from a wide variety of tasks, and they are very, very busy. We also track that data since we began down the road of adding resource navigators too. So we can get the additional information to you if you'd like to know how many points of contacts that they actually do in a year.
I just thought people in the audience might not know
Absolutely.
what a resource navigator is. So.
Absolutely.
Becky, I have a question. How much time is the staff dedicating to attendance on a daily or weekly basis?
So all of our buildings create plans that address attendance, and so they work with their BLTs, which is their building leadership teams. They work with resource navigators, our counselors, and they look at the data, and they have what we call SST, student success teams. So they're meeting weekly, they're looking at the data, and they're tracking who are these kids. And a lot of times they look at a tiered support. So who's in tier 1 or tier 2 that would need just a minimal, like a little boost, and then who are our tier 3 kids that are gonna need a lot more than just a phone call or a visit. So that's typically how buildings address that. They work together and they share out and how we're doing, and we monitor it as well.
And, I mean, they go to the houses to pick the students up, right? I mean,
Yes.
they spend a significant amount of time on attendance rather than teaching, correct? Do we have 10% of their time, 25% of their time? From a staff perspective, what percentage of time do we think they're spending on
Well,
attendance?
if you ask a principal, it's 24/7.
Yeah, so a significant amount.
It's a significant amount, yes. In fact, you know, we also do Muskie home visits, which is a way to build relationships and connections. And so we're hoping that this will increase the relationships so they will come to school if indeed that is the barrier. Sometimes we don't know until we actually, you know, visit and talk and try and connect them with support. And like Erin said, that support can look many different ways.
I think it would surprise most people not involved how much time is spent on attendance, especially at the elementary school level by the staff.
Yes, yes.
And Becky, I do have a question, just a follow-up with Aaron here. As I'm looking at the data, with all this kind of work and the hours that the principals and teachers are designating, I would say, to help our students to be in school. I mean, we see at elementary level, the rate went down by 14%. Do we know where we stand right now? I mean, we know that that rate decreased by 14%, but where do we stand? What is the rate of absenteeism right now? at
District-wide
no,
or
elementary,
in an
for
elementary?
Yeah,
I don't have that rate off the top of my head. Would you have a guess?
Yeah, I have a good guess. Like I said, we have decreased at the elementary more than any other level. If I had a guess at the elementary level, I would say we are about 8 to 9%.
Okay, thank you.
We really, those buildings, much like Aaron said, have spent a lot of time getting that percent down.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so as we continue now, we're going to kind of go into some district data, and the first one we're going to kind of talk about is Iowa assessments. So our data indicates growth in both reading and math at the secondary level, with reading having a 12% increase over the past 5 years and math of having a 6% increase. Elementary has seen a decrease in reading of 5% and a decrease in math of almost 10%. Areas of improvement for our elementary levels in both reading and math need some work. This assessment will be one of the hardest to change due to poverty and attendance. Like Mike mentioned earlier, with chronic absenteeism, this directly affects our results. There is a direct correlation with standardized assessments and free and reduced numbers. Not one district in the state of Iowa or beyond has cracked the code on this as well. Our district has taken a serious look into tightening up our GVC, Guaranteed and Viable Curriculum. The addition of MELC, Muskie Early Learning Center, will also provide an opportunity for our young Muskies to attend full-time preschool, which would translate into an increase in students being prepared for kindergarten. Pre-AP courses have been added options for any of our students to take beginning in 5th grade, along with increased academic supports over the long summer months, such as the Math STEAM camp that took place this summer at Jefferson School. Another barrier is that we do not receive results of the Iowa assessments in a timely manner in order for us to use to inform instructional decisions. For example, we took the test in early May and are not expected to get results back until October or beginning of November. We do acknowledge that continued support is needed to improve in this area.
Real quick before we leave there.
Yep.
So would attendance have been improving over this time period in the elementary schools?
I would say as a district, we really started attacking the chronic absenteeism the past 4 years. Now, the Iowa assessment did have a switch of testing. So it used to be the old paper pencil on the bubble sheets that many of you may remember. So they changed that format about 7 years ago. And then last year they changed it again, and it is now an electronic test. As you know, with every change of a standardized test, a different platform, you can see a dip. But we are working very hard, and we publicly acknowledge we have more work to do in the elementary.
Too, I think one of the other factors with that is that we have more and more elementary students coming to us with some significant academic deficiencies. They are years behind when we get them, and they're always going to be years behind on these standardized tests. It is what has driven the need for a better response at the preschool level. And it's one, as a community, we really have to continue to address is how do we improve that birth to 3 care and 4-year-old care so that we have most of our students ready for kindergarten and they're on grade level when they come into the door.
Yeah, and I understand. I would just like to see, even follow a cohort. I think we've seen that before where we follow the students through the years on their reading comprehension or their math comprehension. As attendance improves, are we seeing improvements in test scores? And if not, then what, if we're correlating all that so strongly, then if we're improving attendance but scores aren't improving, then what's happening
The biggest
there?
correlate between standardized test scores and is the socioeconomic status of the family. Yeah. It has been for decades the best predictor. What ACT scores are going to be is the family's SES. It's the best predictor on any type of standardized test score that really relies on that background knowledge. And if you look across the state of Iowa, you can see the correlation between those schools that have higher poverty rates, their scores. It's almost a direct correlation, and that's something the state recognizes.
Yeah.
It is a problem, but again, I don't want anyone to think that we're making excuses because we're dealing with kids and kids' lives. But as a community, we've got to figure out how are we going to get better at this. And we're not going to get better by throwing rocks at each other. We're going to get better by figuring out how can we make this community better for every kid that comes into our schoolhouse door.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that if we're talking about poverty and attendance as two of the drivers, that we're understanding the trends as we're making progress or not making progress and what we can do.
Exactly.
I know we instituted the new reading curriculum as well within this time period,
Yep.
so there's several things that could be
Year
impacted.
3.
But to see them go down, at the elementary, both math and reading, I think we just need to dig into that a little bit.
So on the flip side of Iowa assessments, we have another assessment, and here's the rub. We do very well with our FAST. So again, our FAST reading assessments are used to screen and monitor students' their literacy skills. So our elementary FAST scores have been above the state average for several years with a growth increase of over 8% in the past 5 years. FAST is a fluency assessment, which is quite different than the Iowa assessment test. FAST is considered a diagnostic screener. It is approximately about a 3 to 5 minute assessment that tracks the rate at which you read, otherwise known as fluency. Fluency is a strong indicator of how well one can decode. FAST is not a comprehension test. FAST is a state-required test that we've done very well since its conception in 2014. We are also making some of the highest amounts of growth compared to other districts in our state. Most districts average a rate of growth at approximately 1 to 2%, while our district overall district growth is 8.2%.
I do have a question.
Yeah,
I'll ask another one.
I know.
So with that,
Yeah.
then how would that kind of comprehend with the
Right.
reading test scores going down if our fluency is improving?
So,
I-
Reading
I-
faster?
I-
Are we reading faster and just not comprehending?
Well, this is the, I explained this to the Buffett family when I was in Omaha, and, because there's the same issue the Omaha Public Schools had, is seem like we make big improvements on getting kids to decode, comprehension seems to lag. The problem, it's relatively, with good instruction, you can get kids to learn to decode. And that's what the FAST test shows, that our teachers are really effective at getting kids to decode. The effect of a comprehension test is when the baggage of poverty jumps on their little backs. Because in order to comprehend, you have to have the depth of vocabulary and experiences to link what you're reading to what it means. And that's why we would often see great improvements till about grade 3, and then things would level off. Because what happens at grade 3? You're stopping learning to read, and you're starting to read to learn. And in order to read to learn, and the comprehension comes back to those vocabulary background issues, goes back to that 10,000 word vocabulary gap that kids come into kindergarten with. It goes back to that 30 million word gap in language interaction. It is the most critical thing that we have to do is somehow, how do we close that gap? Because without vocabulary, it's difficult for kids to perform as well in math, science, history, reading, because there's nothing in their heads to connect and hook things to. So that is why the two tests are they measure two very different things, and that's why I said the instruction can really affect FAST, but the socioeconomic status, the background experiences of kids really affect the Iowa test.
One question I have, and I apologize, I'm going to ask you to look back a little bit at the data previously presented, but we've got secondary proficiency rate in math and reading, 73, 70, right in that range percent. We're graduating 84% of our kids. Does that mean, again, we're painting with broad brush and maybe not comparing apples directly to apples, but there's a significant portion, maybe 10, maybe 15% of the kids who are graduating who aren't proficient in reading and math. Is that right?
I would challenge that from this perspective. Having been a high school principal for a long time, when you get a room full of juniors and say, we're going to take a state test, what does this mean for me? Nothing.
All right, well, but then that questions the positive results that we're experiencing as well.
The other side of that is, again, they're not meeting benchmark, but it doesn't mean that they're academically deficient.
I'm not saying someone's illiterate.
Right.
But what does benchmark mean?
Means you'd be on grade level.
And
So,
what does grade level mean?
well, for instance, it'd mean, so for instance, you might be graduating and reading at a 10th grade level. That probably, for some folks, isn't going to hold them back from what they want to do.
Okay. I mean, it's going to impede their ability to go on to, if they're looking at higher education.
If you're looking at a four-year school and some of those things, that very well could be. So, the other side of that, we've also increased the number of kids that are graduating that have IEPs.
Right.
And so, some of those kids may not perform at benchmark on a standardized test.
And my point is not so much to draw a fine statistical analysis there, but to remind us to refocus on all this data is important, yes, and some of it's very encouraging, and I like that. But we also have to bear in mind, what does a diploma from Muscatine mean?
Right.
And if it means that kids aren't where they need to be, then that's something we also have to remain focused on.
All right, this next slide moves into continuing with our district data is ACT. So we are very, very proud of the fact that we are the only one of few schools in Iowa that pay for all juniors to take the ACT exam. In 2019, our top 60% of students scored above the national average with a composite score of 21.9. Our trend data shows that scores are improving as we are seeing an increase in all percentiles. In particular, we are seeing an increase in the number of students scoring at a 26 or above, and a decrease in the number of students that score below a composite score of 16. In order to better prepare our students to take the ACT as juniors, we started an ACT Aspire testing sequence. Our growth has been sufficient in grades 4 through 10 over the past 3 years on the ACT Aspire standardized test. We continue to increase the number of students that benchmark on the ACT Aspire, which is a significant indicator that our students are becoming more college and career ready. This past year, all of our sophomores took a pre-ACT exam, which provides them with an ACT predictor score, which will be extending this exam to our 8th and 9th graders this year just as well. So by adopting this testing sequence, we're opening up the doors and increasing confidence as we encourage students that post-secondary education is definitely an option for all our students. So this next slide is the other side of learning. So Muscatine provides a wide variety of athletics, clubs, and other extracurricular activities. And here is just one example that shows the other side of curriculum. Our intent is not to limit students, but to expand their choices that go beyond a test score. So with the gracious support of the board committing $1 million for new instruments, our students now have unlimited access to these resources. This correlates with our MCSD of having one of the largest orchestra programs in the state of Iowa at our high school. We have eliminated the financial barrier in order for all students to be able to access this opportunity regardless of socioeconomic status. And as you know, research shows that students involved in music score higher on standardized tests. This next slide goes just a wee bit deeper on our MHS music department. So it depicts the growth within our music department, which has seen an increase of approximately 107 students over the past 7 years, which correlates to a 28% increase of students participating. The numbers on the right-hand side reflects this year's distribution of various groupings within the music department. So you can see that our music students are quite busy and our dedicated staff and parent support is insurmountable. We've added additional music support at the 5th and 6th grade level this year, so our hope is that numbers will increase dramatically over time. Beginning this fall, all of our 5th graders have the opportunity to be involved in band, orchestra, and chorus, which will last, it'll be on a 3-day rotation, which is an increase of time for these essential classes as well. And with that, Tom is going to visit with you about budget.
Before we can go on.
Yes.
Much of the research goes to the last 2 slides that you were showing, is that when students participate in both athletics and fine arts, their desire to be at school increases their attendance rate, which down the road also increases their academic success, because now they feel they have a group of friends who may be that person who's showing them, we want you here, we want you to be part of us. And so that's one of the things I think we have to do, because our schools have to be safe and welcoming to all students. And I think our fine arts and our athletic programs do that. The second thing is we focused a lot on attendance and, I'm sorry, I have to go back. I don't know if it's anybody else, but I think it's really warm in here. Attendance
Yes.
and achievement and whatever else we call it right now. I'm sorry. But what I want to know is, we recognize that in today's school setting and in today's societal setting, mental health issues are creating a huge problem for us. And one of the things that we have to consider, I believe, is what's out there now called adverse childhood experiences, which are those experiences that affect the child in all kinds of ways. And usually if you have, there's a list of like 10, 12, 15, whatever. But if you come across and you say, oh yes, to 4 of them, you are heavily at risk. And that can be everything from going to bed at night without food, hearing your mother say to whoever's in the house, we haven't paid the rent for 2 months, we're going to have to leave. It could be the verbal, physical, and any other type of abuse that they are witnessing. And I think we all have to realize that while we may not be seeing those as perhaps strongly as we should, it's something we need to start looking at. And I think one of our in-services is going to be talking about that when we come up in the next couple of days. So I think all of us need to be aware of those adverse conditions that do affect students and families and their attendance and their success.
And we have had, what Randy's talking about, we call it the ACEs study. We have had 3 professional development full days on this. 3 Januaries ago, we did the ACEs study. We partnered with the Iowa State Extension Office, and they came it was on a cold winter day, and we learned about the ACEs study, and we learned about that impact of what trauma has for our kids day to day, coming in school and in home. We also viewed a film called Resilient. I would highly recommend you watching this. It's a very profound documentary. And then we followed the following year with trauma-informed and based care. So that was the TQ Day last year, part 1 of trauma-informed care, which we partnered with Tanager, which is a resource near Cedar Rapids. And then this year, come August 19th, we have part 2 of the trauma-informed care. So we do have, as a district, we are looking at that because as you know, Randy mentioned, that's a piece of the puzzle, and it's a huge piece. You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so it's at this point in the presentation where I might say take a 5-minute break, but you might not come back, so. We won't do that. So you got me for the next 5 slides. I'm happy to talk about these next 5 as it relates to school finance and Muscatine Community Schools. What the data is going to show is over the last 10 years, specifically maybe the last 6 years through FY18, we've made significant improvement under the leadership of Dr. Reby here. So some key indicators are our UAB, unspent authorized budget, our solvency ratio, and our general fund balance. So I think a 4th one, obviously, we have to look at our enrollment. That's the one we have to start off with. So our K-12 budget enrollment has gone from 5478 in 2008 to 4894 in 2018. Our budget enrollment, which is taken every October 1, is the driving force behind our general fund spending for the next school year. On average, this is a loss of about $3.7 million over the 10 years, and despite this loss of 584 students, which is a 10% decrease, we've worked to maintain some fiscal responsibility with adequate UAB cash reserves and our general fund balance. So as of October 2018, we are the 19th largest district in Iowa. Now, please understand that budget enrollment and certified enrollment, you might hear both terms, they really mean the same thing, budget enrollment and certified enrollment. There's also enrollment served, and I know I've talked about this at prior board meetings, but enrollment served, we have to kind of take out those kids that are open enrolled in and those that are open enrolled out, and that's for for October 1st of 18, that was a minus 151. So you look at our certified enrollment of 4894 minus 151, that's about what we served here last year. So the next slide, our second indicator is UAB, unspent authorized budget. It's also known as unspent balance. So when you're at IASB and you're conversing with fellow board members, they might refer to it as unspent balance, and it's also referred to as carryover. Okay, our unspent authorized budget ratio has gone from 8.8% in 08 to 16.1 in fiscal 18. Our UAB is the remaining legal general fund spending authority at the end of the fiscal year. Maintaining adequate unspent budget authority provides legal authority to spend our general fund balance, which I will consider that our book fund balance, and I'll talk about that in some slides later on here. So let's see, across the state of Iowa, the highest unspent balance is 63%, if you can believe that. I don't know what district or how many that is. The average is 19.1%. So you can see we're right in that general area of being average. So about we're about one in about 76 districts that we're in that 15 to 19.9% range. So if you can think about if our maximum authorized budget, so that budget authority that we generate in 1 year is I'm just throwing out numbers here, 56.2 million, but our actual expenditures end up being, say, 57.7 million, then we've spent down that carryover or that unspent authorized budget. So, and remember, spending authority is just a concept of our general fund, Fund 10, as us accountants refer to it as, and it is unique to Iowa Public Schools, and nowhere in our audit report will you find the concept of UAB, because it's not like a GAAP, a generally accepted accounting principle. You might see it in I'll make note of it in our management discussion and analysis because it is important piece of our general fund. So, next slide is about solvency ratio. So our solvency ratio has gone from 14.1 in 08. It went down as low as 3 in FY10, and it's risen to 24.2 in FY18. And our solvency ratio is a snapshot, a point-in-time measure of revenue remaining, assuming we close our doors at June 30th of the fiscal year, after gathering all of our year's revenues, paying our year's obligations. It's important to keep enough cash reserves on June 30th to pay our obligations to teachers and vendors from July through September, when we start receiving our state funding for the next year. So, so remember, we get our state aid. I've talked about this, and you see this on your monthly financials, where we get our state aid evenly over 10 months, starting in September through June. We get our property tax, our final property tax. Big property tax payment is in April, because we all pay those in March, so the school gets theirs in April. Generally, we have about 7.3 million, so last fiscal year in 18, we have about 7.3 in that accrued payables and payroll that we have to pay out over the next 2 months. And we also, this kind of affects UAB and it affects solvency ratio, but there are those two areas that school boards can overspend for special ed and for ESL. That's spending down our cash, and then we're going back and getting that authority later on. So in FY18, the max solvency ratio, there was a district at 114%, if you can believe that. But I don't know, again, who that was. The median is 17.2, so we're kind of right above the median for the state of Iowa, the minimum being negative 13%. You know, and I it's not wise to have a negative solvency, because that just means you don't have enough cash to survive those summer months, and you have to borrow money in your general fund to get through, which that, you know, now you're paying interest and so forth. So so I believe our instructional support levy that was passed September 11th of 2012, and it started in the 2013-14 school year. So you can see that, well, that instructional support levy generates approximately $2.2 million per year. And so in our case here, I believe when it was presented back then was, you know, if we can generate more revenue, we won't have to make these reductions. So I believe that's what happened. And there wasn't anything that Muscatine did to say, oh, we have this extra revenue, now we're gonna, you know, add programs or add services. We were able to continue on, I guess, as is. So, and that ISL expires June of 2023, which, you know, we'll be bringing that up at a later board meeting again. So, so the next slide is about our general fund balance, which I kind of call our book balance, and that is our unassigned and assigned general fund balance has gone from $6 million in 9 to $13 million in 18 in fiscal year 18. In the general fund, our revenues have outpaced our expenditures, increasing our assigned and unassigned balance by more than 50% over that time. So the blue line is our assigned and unassigned fund balance. So there is, or this graph shows all three kind of in one graph about our UAB, our cash, our fund balance, and then also our cash balance. So, all right. So the last slide I got here is about our property tax rate. So in this is showing how the last, especially 5 years, our overall property tax rate has gone down. And I believe we've touched on this a few times during budget work sessions where, you know, naturally you would think our declining enrollment is going to have some effect on our property tax rate. And that is true, because it doesn't take as much of that district cost per pupil times our budget enrollment to fill that bucket, I guess. So in FY18, we had the 142nd highest rate in the state of Iowa and the 23rd highest rate in property taxes generated, which kind of tells me that we are a property poor district. And remember, this rate of $13.83 is really broken down in between those four taxing funds. So we have the general fund portion, our management fund portion, and our physical plant and equipment levy portion. There's also a debt service levy portion, which ours is 0. So as you can see here, over the last several years, you know, there's lots of things that go into that property tax rate, and we go over those during budget work sessions, but at the same time, we have been losing students, and we have been reducing our property tax rate. We've been managing to sustain or increase our UAB and our solvency ratio. So next, I will turn it over to Mr. McGrory for some capital projects.
This is our, I promise, our last slide. Thanks for your patience again. Is we just wanted to go over really quickly our facility and grounds improvements that we've done over the last 5 years. I'm going to touch on a few things that I think are really impressive, is that we've built a new elementary school of $10.5 million, a new multi-purpose room of $3.5. We're currently constructing a $4.5 million addition to McKinley. We're doing a $9 million state-of-the-art STEM in science lab at the high school. And I think this is a great time to announce this publicly, is that we are just recently found out that we're the generous recipients of a $1 million donation from the Carver Trust Foundation. And we are very excited about that. It will allow us to really do a state-of-the-art science and STEM. And as most of you know, the Carver Trust is for a long time been about how they can provide quality education for students. And this will leave an indelible imprint on our students in our district. So we're really excited by that.
And I just want to say Mike really did the lion's share of work in getting that grant put together, working with the Carver folks, and we wouldn't be receiving that without his efforts.
Oh, thanks, Jerry. Thank you. Then we also did a $3 million upgrade, so we're just finishing up. We did 3 buildings this summer. That will finish all of our buildings, all new furniture in all of our buildings except the high school. Then we have a $7.5 million in just general upgrades. Each year we do about $1.5 million in upgrades. To give you some idea on that list, Ryan and Jeff have done a wonderful job with this and also overseeing our projects. They're all on schedule. And Ryan in a few minutes is going to have a great presentation as far as updating the board on where we're at with all of our projects. But we have a list this long of just summer projects that we do every summer. And it's an amazing list. You're going to see a lot of things that are on this list in the presentation. I would also if you have time as board members, we're going to recognize, because they've been working extremely hard, our custodians, as well as our maintenance people, this Friday with the luncheon. And the board has, I think, been invited to that. So if you can make that, that would be great. Kind of my last comments would be, when you look at everything we've talked about tonight, you look at our academics, the improvements we've seen in the academics. We know we have areas we need to grow in and we need to improve upon. You look at our facilities. We did $38 million in improvements over 5 years, and we did not bond, we did not go into debt, and at the same time, we actually lowered our property tax. That's unheard of. And so as a board, I commend your stewardship, Jerry's stewardship, as far as all these things going on in our district. And then you also look at our budget. Like Tom said, every barometer you look at on our budget has improved over the last 8 to 10 years. And that's really exciting. To do that with declining enrollment is really kind of amazing. So with that, I'll let Jerry have closing comments.
Yeah, I just want to say that I couldn't be prouder of the teachers, principals, staff that we have in this district. They work extremely hard each and every day to do the very best for our students. And I would challenge anyone to find a time when there's been greater challenges facing our teachers and principals in the building. And at the same time, we're seeing we are making headway. The fact our graduation rate is the best it's ever been is at a time when we also increased the graduation requirements. Our kids are stepping up to the plate. Some of the kids are coming up to the plate with, they just need a little bit, they need more help. I'm a strong believer that a strong community needs strong schools, but I'm also just a strong believer that strong schools need a strong community. We cannot do this alone. We are not a silo in this community. We are representative of the community. And if we're going to address and become a better school system, we also have to have all of us coming together and say, how are we going to be a stronger community? How are we going to address the rates of poverty in this community? How are we going to address the mental health in this community? How are we going to make sure that everybody understands the value of showing up and being at school, at work, and taking care of those things? I have great hope for this district. But like the slide says, it cannot be done alone, and it is no place for simple solutions. Simple solutions will never work in complex organizations and complex organizational problems. As a friend of mine once said, yes, school improvement really is brain surgery. There is a lot of moving parts. They all have to fit together, and it's going to take a coordinated effort. And I believe this community can do it, and I believe that this is the time to do it. I have great faith that as the district is looking at new leadership next year, that you have some great things to build on. You're going to have some great resources to work with, but do not underestimate the challenges. So I appreciate Mike, Becky, Tom for presenting this data. There's a lot of it. The good news, there's no quiz, although maybe there should be, I don't know. Does anybody have any other questions?
Well, I have not a question, I have a comment. As I'm sitting here listening to this presentation, yes, we do have certain things to celebrate, and yes, we do have certain things to work on. But one statement that, Becky, you mentioned, that as I'm thinking more and more about it, I'm thinking, what are we doing to perhaps maybe verify that? You've mentioned, when we talk about the Iowa assessments, that because we change from paper and pencil to computer, and every time you change that, yes, we might expect some decreases and so on. And I see at secondary level still the numbers are going up, which is great. You know, it's different age group and so on. They might handle computers much better than elementary. So I would love to see our district looking into this issue. Could it be that part of the reason why we have a decrease in the results in math and reading under Iowa assessment is due to this issue? I mean, if we can look into that also and find out, beside, you know, the factors that we talk about, the poverty and so on. But I would like really to figure out if this is an issue or not. You know, when you put 6, 7 years old in front of a computer to take a test, they might be afraid of using that, even though, you know, the new generations are really good using technology, but perhaps maybe playing games and so on, and not a test. So I would love to see if we can consider this point and start looking into it and see what can we do to get them ready to sit in front of the computer and take that test without any fear or any other issues too. But other than that, thank you.
I'd also remind folks, I know the board is well aware of it, but you know, we are also going to be going through a curriculum audit. And while we've done a lot of the institutional changes, organizational changes that you would typically do for school improvement, I'm really looking forward to the suggestions that we're going to get from the curriculum management folks. And that, I think, will give the board a whole nother array of solutions to take a look at and answers to our challenges.
Madam President, if we're done with this excellent presentation, I would, I guess, ask that we consider taking the young ones here who are very stoic but look to be a little tired, if we could move on to the decision that they're probably waiting for out of order.
What are the wishes of the board?
If that's a motion and it takes a second, I would go ahead and second that motion.
I guess if it does, yeah.
Okay. Any discussion on that? So we'll move these, I believe, if I understand correctly, the motion is to take letter I
6I, yes.
and actually move that up. All those in favor of moving that item up, please signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed? And the motion carries. Ryan, we'll be back to you.
Sorry, man.
All right, so that would take us to 6I, which are requests for releasing from teaching contract post the May 2019 date. There are 5 resignations in front of the board to be looked at individually. I would recommend we start in the order they're listed in. Jerry, do you want to give a little background on each one?
And a little quick review of our board policy is that any resignation after May 21st, that the board can require a suitable replacement for that. It is always, late requests are always difficult because it almost always puts kids in classrooms in some jeopardy, because it's difficult to find quality replacements in late July and August. As one of the administrators from one of the schools that's involved in this said, oh, I sure hope that my person's released because we don't have any applicants. And I said, really? Yeah, I would know the feeling because we're in the same spot. You know, so this is very difficult for me because I would have a difficult time recommending that there be release from a contract. But what I want to do is go through and give the board some options on this. So the very first on the list, Sarah Baker, the science teacher, her resignation came in August 3rd. We did advertise. There were no science folks out there. I'm not surprised in August. She is looking at a position in Davenport. I believe she lives in the Davenport district. But there would be no option to fill her spot at this point. We would even if we move some people around and change their assignments, which would be a difficult conversation to have with someone at this time of the year with them reporting in about 7 or 8 days, we would still be a half a person short for science. So it would be very difficult for me to give you any option on that position. The second, Sandrine Gabriel, is a Strat 2 teacher. There are currently no Strat 2 teachers available in the state. We are already down one Strat 2 teacher that we need. I believe Davenport currently has 24 special education openings. They're providing a $9,000 stipend, and they're still having a difficult time finding folks. We would not have a way of really completing that gap if we release that teacher. Same with the middle school science. There simply are no science folks out there at this time. The only thing we could look at is increased class sizes. Maybe look at 35, 40 kids in a classroom and do something like that. I'm not really that interested in taking that on. That again is not good for kids. So I really don't see many options for those first three because they are extremely difficult positions to fill. They're difficult positions to fill in April, let alone at this time of the year. Dana Wright, who is a title teacher. We have, in the past, we've tried to find folks that have a strength in reading. That's what we're emphasizing in title. There have been no applicants that have the reading background that we'd like. I would say we could come up with, we could find a Band-Aid approach to this that would allow Dana to be released. Again, it is not going to be, it's going to be a hardship on the building, but we could probably make that one happen. Sarah Myers, again, ESL, which is, again, one difficult to find. We do have some other ESL teachers in the district, and I would say that Sarah is another one that we could rearrange some schedules to make that happen. So when it comes down to it, if the board decides that they would like to look at a release, the first three, Sarah Baker, Sandrine, and Andrew, I do not feel like we have a good response for filling those. The other two we can make do, but again, late resignations are really difficult. They put districts in a difficult spot, and I certainly, but it is what it is.
Do we have any reasons that, I know Ms. Wright has offered
Yeah.
information. Have any of the others offered information about their reasoning?
Well, Sarah Sarah Baker has been offered a SAM position in Davenport. So she'd be part-time science teacher, part-time SAM. So she sees, I think, that as an advancement. Sandrine would be not in a classroom, she'd be working at the AEA. Andrew coaches at Durant, so he would like to be at Durant. Dana lives in Illinois and her kids go to the school she'd like to teach at. And Sarah, I can't remember the school. Alcater.
Central Community.
It's her hometown.
Okay.
And she would like to be back there. So that's the situations where those are at.
And given the lack of applicants, would it be fair to say that anybody we did hire, we'd be inflicting the same pain on another district?
Yeah, to be really honest with you, I've talked to a number of these administrators, and they kind of all said, I can't believe you'd let folks out. So at this point, what we would probably be looking at is someone that does not currently have a contract, maybe someone that's being relocated to the area. The Department of Education really frowns on starting the year with a long-term sub. It's almost impossible anymore to get that to be the case. So we would have to look at some other options there. But I think I said with Sarah and Dana, we can probably make that work.
And the policy specifies that the board can take action with the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners, appropriate action regarding suspension. What does that mean?
Okay,
What does that look like?
A contract is a contract. If we would have gone to any of these teachers on July 1 and said, we decided we don't need you,
Right.
my guess the response would have been, you can't do that, I have a contract. They run both ways. And so the question was asked, well, what if I just don't show up? Well, the state of Iowa considers that a breach of contract, and that the response to that from the Department of Education has typically been a revocation of a teaching license. Because again, a contract is a contract. However, if you're out of state, it doesn't have quite the pull. The folks that would be looking, they cannot sign a contract with another district if they're under contract with an Iowa school. So.
I see. And what have we done in the past? Have we,
Time planning.
in the past, have we not let folks out? Has there been any instances?
I don't know if we've had folks in August. I mean, this is late.
I know we've dealt with it a few times. I'm just trying to remember.
Yeah,
I can't.
and we have, and I think for the most part, we have tried to accommodate folks. But new teachers report Wednesday. And the next week, teachers report, and there's just, this is a crunch time. So again, there are 3 of those folks that are probably irreplaceable.
Now, I feel bad, I'm the only one asking questions, but we'd received some information, I think it was today, suggesting that in at least one of these cases, representations were made to one of the employees, basically that would have given the impression that the resignation was a done deal. They were treated as having resigned, terminated, separated, whatever you want to call it. And in the light, and I can't remember what month it was, but in the light of the discussion we had a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, about, I think a principal candidate was told that they got the job before it was approved by the board. I mean, if that's the case, that seems to me to be a troubling pattern of us pulling the trigger before,
Well,
being ready for hiring.
the board is the only group that can terminate a contract.
Correct. But in terms of how we're dealing with people.
Right.
I'm concerned. I mean, the board's the only one that can approve the administrative contracts. The board's the only one that can
Well, and I would remind the board, I think in the case of the principal, it was announced that they would be recommended to the board. But,
That's not consistent with my
Yeah.
my recollection, but my recollection is fuzzy.
yeah, so, and we have had some conversation that probably in the future, any resignation, there should be probably a joint agreement, a joint notice given with MEA and us saying, here are the consequences of if you would breach a contract. Here is a contract is not ended until the board says it's ended, and that type of thing, so there's no confusion. But again, I would also say most people, and I hear people say, well, I don't know about all this contract stuff. Most people know that when they sign a contract to buy a car, they can't go back in 6 weeks and say, I changed my mind and I'm going to want my money back. Contracts are binding for a
But
reason.
if the salesman tells me, hey, you got a week to get out of this, even if it's not in the written document,
Right.
then I may well have a case saying.
Yeah.
So, my concern is, if we're giving out COBRA notification, that's a clear indication to me legally of we're treating someone as having resigned and it being accepted. I don't know all that's going on, but I am very concerned at the possibility we might be sending mixed signals to people. And I don't want to see that continue, if that is
So
occurring.
how many people did we do that with in this, out of the 5?
I think Dana and Sarah probably did not have the same conversation that the other 3 did.
Okay.
Partly because of the timing, probably.
Sure.
And again, that needs to be corrected. But at the end of the day, people have to understand that they are under contract. They made a decision to sign that contract, and they said we would be there. And also, I would say I have not had one of those folks make an appointment to see me.
Is it possible, the way I'm thinking about it now, we do have a situation in front of us right now, but I think moving forward, is it possible that the HR make it very clear to everybody that here is the day where once you sign that contract, you are committing to that 1-year contract. Otherwise, the only people that can waive that will be the board. I think if we do send that clear message to everybody from day one, so everybody will have that picture, and none of them can come back and say, hey, well, I didn't know that there is a board policy or something like that.
Right.
But I think it's definitely is important to have something like that.
And my question is, previously, when we have done late resignations, there has been the ability of the district to impose those costs onto the person who's doing the late resignation. Have, for instance, Dana, Sarah, Andrew, Sandrine, and Sarah been informed of that?
Well,
Or are we not really
it
following?
was the cost of advertising.
Right,
And now with the Teach Iowa, there's no cost.
okay.
And so that's kind of gone by the wayside
Okay,
with the change in that.
That's good to know, because if that wasn't a point of conversation, I would hate for them all of a sudden to find out, oh, you mean I have to pay for this advertising?
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Jerry,
yeah.
to replace these, if we really spent time, are we talking about an entire year without all 5? Are we talking about 6 months?
Yeah, there would be, I suppose in the second semester, there may be some new grads in science. Maybe, probably not. I just don't think you'll find Strat 2 people.
And a long-term sub for some of them is out of the question as well.
Well, the department head, like I said, frowns on, and the problem is finding
Everybody's
a
frowning.
long-term sub
Everybody's
in that
frowning right-
area.
Everybody's frowning right now, so we might
Yes,
as well.
well,
have them frown with
and
us.
here's the, so if you're taking a biology class, I'm not sure I want to tell a parent, you have a sub-biology teacher for a foundational science course.
Just a point of clarification. I see 5 requests on the agenda under this item, but I see, I think, 8 letters
Yes,
in our,
yes. If they were able to be filled, it was not an issue. The
So-
ones that you have here are the ones that we did not have
I see.
a way to
But
fill.
under the terms of the policy, we still have to approve those other 3, I would agree.
Yeah, and you did.
We did.
You did.
Well, not
Oh,
yet.
no, not
Those are
yet,
in-
because
they're in
it's
the
on the
consent agenda, and we
consent-
took
it's
this
on the
out of-
consent agenda.
We took this
Yeah.
took this out of order.
Yeah,
So at some point in time, somebody walks away from the table inconvenienced. It's
Yes.
either the employee or it's the 35 to 40 students that are gonna be put in a classroom over the amount of, I mean, that, the unfortunate part is there's no win for us. I mean, there, so if I'm hearing you correctly, you feel that you could make a workable Band-Aid for the last 2 resignations that came in 2 months past the date, and 3 you feel is a pretty tough fix anyway around for the
Right.
district.
it would be.
And I just, oh, go ahead. No, I'm talking too much, Debbie, go ahead.
You don't have an answer, but I want to throw this out, that I'm looking at the first 3, and you're saying, okay, we couldn't do it without them. What does that look like in the classroom? So we have kids that are 20 kids or 22 kids in a classroom instead of 35. Are those teachers, and I love teachers, my mother's still an educator after 40-plus years, are those teachers going to be in the best? I don't know what to say about that.
I think all 5 of those people are professional enough that they would take care of business. I would not worry about that.
So based on what I'm hearing, I would move that the board accept the resignations of Dana Wright and Sarah Myers at this time.
A
I'll
second.
second that.
Go ahead.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the late resignation of Dana Wright and Sarah Myers, as presented to the board. Is there any other discussion?
Does that mean we are not okay the other 3 out?
I think
or are
we're-
we-
I think we're
Are we
taking
gonna do
those
that?
separately.
I'm splitting, I'm
That's what I'm
splitting
asking.
them,
That's
okay?
what I'm asking.
Okay, so just the 2 at this point in time.
Yes.
I just want to take the opportunity to read the relevant part of the policy. It says, after May 20th, compelling reasons are shown and a suitable replacement is found, both in the exclusive and final judgment of the board. It does say the board will request, if the employer basically doesn't fulfill the contract, the board will request that the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners take the appropriate action. However, the final paragraph says the school board reserves the right to enforce or waive this policy in whole or in part. So basically what I'm saying is we can do whatever we want.
Right.
We're not, the policy does not constrict us in terms of our options.
Is there any,
Well, I'm having difficulty because I'm very concerned about the information I received today. I don't know whether it would be appropriate to present that information and allow and ask the administration or the people described in this information to respond. I'd rather avoid that if, I think it won't be material to the decision we make, but I guess I'm looking for people to weigh in on that. I think we've all received that information. Do we think it's helpful to bring it to light?
Nathan, does that have anything to do with the motion of the 2 people who?
Yes, it does.
Okay, okay.
More information than what you've already brought up?
Well, maybe we did not, because some of us received an email. I did not receive it directly because it went to the MCSD online org, which I confess I haven't looked at in probably 3 years. But I got it forwarded to me. So I guess we haven't all received that information then. I was laboring under the misconception that I was the only one who hadn't received it.
I think everyone has received it, and I'd also say that the reason all 5 are grouped together is because there is no suitable replacement.
Right. And I'm,
That is also why I gave an option for those two.
Yeah.
That's what, and I asked if we're still gonna talk about the other three, because I wanna talk about if Sarah was actually told that she could resign. That's part of the email that we received.
Well,
That's
there
why
were,
I wanna have the
maybe there
discussion
were
on this.
several different emails, because I received one forwarded to me from Ms. Wright explaining some of the circumstances, and that's what I was asking about. Because if those things did happen, or even some of them happen, I've got grave concerns, not only about the legality of it, but the morality of it. But, you know, I don't want to unnecessarily drag something out that may not be material to the decision. So I guess what I would like to do is informally poll everyone, how you think you're coming out on this motion, and if it appears to be necessary, then I would bring that information out, but if not, I'd rather spare everyone that.
I think it would be best to share that information because it's giving the impression that
Sure.
there's something
Yeah.
deep and dark.
Absolutely.
And it would
And
be
so I
public
would share that.
information now
Sure,
that it's
sure.
been
Anything
emailed.
communicated to all of us is
Absolutely.
It's
Well,
public- it's
and like
public
I said, I
information.
didn't get it
Please
until
read it.
the meeting started, so I apologize, so I was looking at my phone a little bit. I'm wondering what the best way to share that information, would it be to ask Ms. Wright to share it directly with us? Whether it would be to forward the email, and we all take a second
I
look at it?
think to summarize, I think
I
she
think-
felt that she had been released because her email account had been altered or turned in her computer, those type of things.
Yeah, I mean,
And again, that those probably shouldn't have happened. But the reality it is, until the board
Sure.
ends it, that
Right.
has to go through this. I wanted to make sure the board understood we had a situation where there was going to be a very difficult challenge because you will hear from teachers and parents that they do not like the solution.
Oh.
And I wanted to make sure the board understood that that was what you're going to hear.
Yeah.
So I gave the board that information, and I'm also saying, that's why I'm giving those two the finding an option for them. But I think the reality is that late resignations are difficult for everybody.
oh, absolutely. My concern has to do with, first of all, like legally under contract law, there's a theory called apparent authority, which is even if a contract doesn't exist or some change to a contract doesn't exist, if people who may or may not have who could reasonably be construed to have authority, act in such a way to give a person the impression that there is an agreement or a change to the agreement, then that can be legally enforceable. And I guess it makes sense to go through this, and I will forward this to everybody. There was the issue of the laptop and keys immediately being turned in upon resignation. The district confirming to a bank that the employee had resigned and was no longer employed by the districts, a COBRA election notice being issued. And so, yeah, I mean, and this is what it's talking about. So it seems like that there was some sloppy procedure. And that sloppy procedure troubles me. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but I want to make sure that we clean it up if in fact this did happen.
Absolutely, and I think the best way we'll do that is to make sure that teachers understand late resignations are probably going to
No
be
doubt
very
about it.
difficult in the future.
No doubt about it. One other question I had is with regard to Ms. Wright's conditional certification. Was that, if she were to stay in the district, would that be something that would have to be renewed? Can that last for longer than a year?
That, I'm not sure where she's at with her.
Okay. I mean, I guess the question is, could she even teach if she were still here? But in any event, that's all I wanted to bring up on the matter, and I wanted to address my concern with what I think may have been sloppy process.
So I think there's a motion on the floor. And the motion is to approve the 2 late resignations of Dana Wright and Sarah Myers. Is there any, there's been a motion made and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. That leaves before us the request for the other 3 resignations of Sarah Baker, Sandrine Gabriel, and Andrew Strunk. What are the wishes of the board?
I don't have any indication that there's any extenuating circumstances in these, and given that we don't have replacements, I would move to deny those three.
There is.
There are?
Missed an email from Sarah where she went through the same process that.
Oh, I see.
Dana went through. That's why I was saying it, we were approving.
Then if I may amend my motion, let's take the two besides Sarah.
I would also have the board look at the date of that resignation letter, is August 3rd.
Correct.
Late, I know.
Very.
But she was indicated that she was allowed to resign, right? And she went through the exit process.
I don't know, is that, I'd ask HR on that one.
Well, she first asked if the possibility of being released from her contract, and then she was later informed to go ahead and send her letter. But I don't believe that she's been through the entire termination process.
Has she taken any action in reliance upon her belief?
No.
Do we know?
No.
And which one, and I'm sorry,
Sarah
which one is
Baker.
she? Sarah Baker, where
Sarah
is she
Baker.
going?
Davenport.
Davenport.
I thought that was
She's
the
the one that lives
latest
in Stockton and it's kind
That's,
of like halfway
that's the other
between-
Sarah Myers. Or no, Sarah's,
School science teacher.
yeah, that's Sarah Baker.
So she lives kind of halfway between. Gotcha.
And that's not the one we received from the other school district, the email about?
That's Sarah Myers.
That's Sarah Myers.
And that's my confusion.
All right, well, let me withdraw my motion because I'm not sure what information is available, so I'll let someone else make a motion, since I don't believe there would have been a second on my motion.
Jill, a COBRA question for you. When COBRA paperwork is given to an employee, you have to fill out the paperwork, so it's not the district offering COBRA. That's a separate process. When does the 90 days start for the time frame to fill out your paperwork for COBRA? Is it the time that you would actually send in your resignation, or would it be the time at which the board accepts a resignation, and that's when the 90-day period starts?
It probably starts at the end of the contract.
At the resignation, I would.
Well, their benefits are paid through August, so it can't start till
September
September
1.
1.
September 1.
So again, if I give you the paperwork for COBRA, I'm not telling you you have to fill it out. What you do with that is up to you. And you could not do anything with it then until September 1st anyway. Okay.
For the
Can
record,
I-
go ahead. I was just saying, for the record, I know, I agree with you, Dr. Reeby, that I think everybody on that list, they're professionals, but we're also people. And I get what you're saying. I will tell you that I'm concerned about just will they be in it for the kids? And I know they're for the kids anyway, and I'm not suggesting they wouldn't. That's my concern.
Do they have an expectation that they may have to stay?
Yeah, I'd say those three, definitely.
They definitely do.
And I'm just thinking loud. I saw the emails almost half hour before the meeting, and part of it is I have been with my mom at the intensive care unit at the University of Iowa for 10 days now, and I'm not watching my emails. And apparently they send them, I think, if we receive them today. So I feel like, and I'm just like talking loud. I don't know if we can do that or not. Just an idea. Can we call for a special meeting for the board, perhaps maybe tomorrow or something like that? But at least it gives us, those of us who didn't have even chance to look at this materials, to look at it, think about it, and come up with hopefully a good decision rather than just make a decision today.
I don't think it could be tomorrow because of the 24 hours, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying tomorrow, not necessarily tomorrow, but I mean in a couple of days, because it's just like, I don't feel like, making decisions tonight regarding something like that without having the information and take time to read the information and make hopefully a much better decision. You know, I agree with also with Toby. I agree with also your assessment is having them in the classroom. You know, the students' learning is very important for us, and the quality of teaching is very important for me, and I don't know how and what will happen if we say, you know, you are here with a contract for 1 more year. But also I do understand that the board policy have to be also respected too. Hence, I mentioned before that we need to make it very clear to everybody, with no question about that, from day one, that here is the date where you can say, yes, I'm here next year, or no, I'm resigning. After that, it's gonna be a hard and tough decision. So I don't know, I'm just like throwing this.
I would probably recommend if waiting a couple days makes the situation more difficult. If the board feels like they would like to release them, and it is entirely up to the board, if you'd like to do that, do it now so that we have more time to figure out a resolution. Because it's not gonna get easier 48 hours from now to resolve this.
Jerry, my question is kind of a hypothetical question. That if these late resignations had been a result of a spouse having to accept a job, let's say in Indiana or someplace else, or if there had been a change in family dynamics, that perhaps one of them had a parent who was in late stages of cancer and they were the only child and they needed to be closer. Would those types of conditions have made this a little bit easier to do? And no, it's kind of...
Yeah, you know, and that's why you can't have a uniform policy, because every situation is different. The contract is between the district and an individual. And so, like I said, if the board feels like they would be more comfortable in releasing them, we'll figure it out.
Well, another possible option, this is hypothetical also, might be saying to those 3 individuals, okay, you can, hopefully we'll have found someone by 2nd semester. We would like you to stay the 1st semester, and then we'll relook at this in January. I don't know
Well,
what that does.
I think probably at least 2 of those, there wouldn't be a position for them in.
All right.
I mean, if the interest is in letting them go, they would have to leave now in order to, otherwise, those positions may not last forever for them to be available for either, because these folks are needing to fill these things also.
Got it.
So,
And they can or cannot be financially responsible if we need to do a sub in the interim.
no, but at the same time, we're not paying a teacher, so there's not an additional cost. Yeah, the only time you can receive any monetary used to be with advertising, but that's kind of off the table now, so. So my feeling is I do not like late resignations. I think it puts districts in difficult spots. I understand things come up and not everybody looks at things the same way I do. So again, if the board feels that this would be the best interest of practice, we'll make it work.
Yeah, of your ability to make the best of a bad situation, we have no doubt. I'm very confident in that.
But I'm also going to say, when people in August send a letter saying I'd like to be out, they maybe should come and see me.
I don't disagree with you.
like in July.
But,
Yeah.
you know, that's why, you know, I'm concerned, you know, because saying two science teachers here, that is very hard to replace them. What will happen to the quality of teaching and learning, which, I mean, as a person, the quality of education for our students comes first, for me as a person. So I'm finding it very difficult, really, to look at it both ways, to be honest with you, too.
So Aaron, just trying to clarify, since we have two people with the same name,
Who's the other Sarah?
the Sarah we approved releasing.
Yes.
is the one you had concerns about.
Sarah Myers.
Gotcha.
Sarah Myers. I was
So-
confused. It was the other Sarah.
Does anybody have any concerns specific to any of these three people that haven't been raised yet?
No.
Okay. Then I would, once again, move that those three, meaning Sarah Baker, Sandrine Gabriel, and Andrew Strunk, not be released.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to not accept the resignations of Sarah Baker, Sandrine Gabriel, and Andrew Strunk. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. And again, that's the three resignations are not accepted. All right, we're going to go back in our proper sequence of items. We are back under our board targets and goals. And we are to Muscatine schools will utilize resources effectively and equitably, which brings us to our construction update.
I can't do it very easily on my phone. Could you forward that email to everybody?
Ryan is making his way
Thank you.
to the front.
Coffee break?
All right, I apologize. I don't have a lot of data to show you guys, but I have a fun picture show for you. So, we have taken on a lot this summer. I think that given everything that we've taken on, we have done a tremendous job of keeping things under budget as well as on time. So I think you guys will be pleasantly surprised as we scroll through here. The first thing I'm going to do is John and Justin Miller were very gracious enough to bring their drone out for us and shoot some video footage of some of our outdoor projects. So I'm going to go ahead and play this really quick. It's about 8 minutes. Take your time. We can fast forward if we need to as well. So with the Madison project, our new parking lot drop-off area includes 17 new parking spaces for parents and a new drop-off lane for parents as well. With the increase in the number of students at Madison, we felt it was very important to make that a more feasible solution for getting in and out of that building.
Can I ask one question about it real
Absolutely,
quick?
anytime.
So I run by there every other day or so, and the sidewalk that lets them into the pickup lane is
Yes.
right next to the street. Like it comes out that point, and there's no curb there or anything. It's fairly flat. It feels like
So-
a little sharp to me, like right in there.
And the idea is that as that is for pickup only on that sidewalk, so theoretically, we won't have any moving traffic there when they're getting dropped off, or when
Oh,
they're
in
getting
f-
picked
in-
up. They're
on
gonna
the-
get, the students will get dropped off on the other end of the building into the gym in the morning. So theoretically, we won't have students walking in that area when traffic is moving by it.
Okay.
If we need to look at that, we can add some bollards or
It just
some
looked
other things. Yeah, I know, I
really
understand
tight.
what you're saying.
You're right on that
Yeah.
corner.
Right there where the
See
red
that
colored,
square is coming up?
yeah.
So all the students come out that long sidewalk on the left and then have to take a sharp right onto
Yeah.
that sidewalk.
Yeah, so we'll have
There's no
staff.
There's no curb right there at
Oh,
that
because
red.
it drops right
Right.
to the...
Just right to it's just smooth to the street.
Right, and we'll have staff members at that corner directing
Okay.
students down to their parents, so. The Colorado project, obviously, there's a lot that's going inside the building, but outside the building, both playgrounds were redone completely with nice privacy fence along the outside.
Square, what is that game? Four square. No, and there's the circle of 8. Oh, yeah, that's complicated as hell. Funnel ball.
How's the internal construction?
I have less hair, and the less stuff that's left is gray. However, it's okay. We're going through the punch list now. And I have some pictures of the interior as well, so that we can show you
Yeah,
guys.
because that looked pretty cool in some of those pre-con drawings we saw.
Probably not quite as cool.
Well. So is the fenced-in playground, is that for the younger kids?
Yeah, the fenced-in playground is for the younger kids. Obviously, we left the older, the playground equipment that you're seeing right now on the video is less than 5 years old.
Oh, yeah, it looks good.
So we wanted to make sure that that was still being able to be utilized. And then this is directly out of the back of the building. There's another enclosed playground area with the black rubberized coating, sandbox.
They buried tires on my playground when I was a kid.
So with the McKinley project, we're actually well on our way outside. The steel that has arrived for the gym well ahead of schedule. In fact, it's almost completely up as of this afternoon when I went out to take some more pictures.
What's the date on these videos?
This was last Wednesday.
Wow.
So I don't think the laser will show up on the TV, but the new entrance, you can see the classrooms are already starting to be bricked in, as well as the new entrance to the building. The gymnasium is structural steel is up. The parking lot is completely done. They are starting to pour the sidewalks around it today. That should be done by the end of this week. All of the interior work is complete except for a few punch list items with painting and caulking, so.
And when are those going to be ready?
We will theoretically be in the new wing by January. By the start of second semester is our goal.
Good deal.
So it's going to be a rough first semester for McKinley, but Joel has done a really good job of planning and getting things ready to go for that building. So with all the construction, we obviously had to pour new entrances into the building. This entrance will not be open for the kids at the start of the school year. However, the entrance into the other wing will be, and the parking from the parking lot as well. At MHS, we have our STEM project going on. We've run into a few issues with the start of that project. We've hit the same gas line 4 times. However, that has now been relocated.
And that was laid in a serpentine manner.
It was a wonderful serpentine pattern throughout the front. So the gym, or the pool, lost its heat 4 times. However, within, a couple hours, it was back up and running again. So most of the foundation, if you look at it today, is laid on both sides coming down. We'll have to close in the end. The fence is going to get pushed back in. We're going to close their construction site down a little bit as school starts to ramp up to make sure that we have adequate travel around the high school. Interior work is complete so far. We're looking at where the green is on the building there, which used to be the window coming out, will be the new trophy case, and there's going to be a secondary entrance cut into that wall where the old trophy case was to exit or to enter into the science wing. 16 new handicap parking spots out the back of the building right by the gymnasium entrance.
That is beautiful.
They did a very
Randy's
nice
not
job.
in here, but yeah.
Very nice job.
Where Randy went.
So that is on the
That is on the, what would be the east side of the building, by the football stadium.
stadium's over here,
Yes.
yes.
So this is actually, I had him shoot this as well, because this is where the new storm shelter / concession stand will be going, and that concourse will be happening.
Oh, really?
So when that starts, this is where that will be.
The storm shelter, when it's completed, it'll be probably 30 to 35 feet from the high school.
Yes.
So it's gonna be on the.
It's going to be on the
in the
grass,
in
yeah.
that grassy
The
area.
storm shelter will be on the grass. There's no road for anybody to go across to the storm shelter. Very close to in fact, it's about 100 feet closer than we originally were planning.
You could be in the handicap spot and get in there.
That's right.
Same side of the road.
Roll right in.
Right.
Would you want to mention to the board kind of how the traffic's going to work at that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't include that in my slideshow here, but I'll get to that.
Yeah.
Additionally, the tennis courts, we did at MHS. The tennis courts were in really, really bad shape. They've been working on them now for about 3 weeks. They are slated to finish up by Friday. The outside of the tennis courts will be black. New tennis court surface will be purple with white lines. Trying to bring it more in line with our school colors. But you can see the amount of surface repair work they had to do to get these level again. So it was a fairly significant process for them. And this should set us up for fairly well for the next 10 to 15 years with the tennis courts.
I've been redone a couple times. Did you play tennis? Can you see the ball on purple?
I don't know. I don't play
Yeah,
tennis. I have
too,
no
I
idea.
guess. Yeah.
Can you see the ball in purple?
You should.
Right.
Aaron says yes.
Tennis ball, you can see in purple.
Right, yellow.
We're gonna have yellow balls.
That's usually what they are.
If you'd like, I could set up an excursion to the tennis courts for you guys.
There you go.
Could you?
Maybe
So-
a demonstration.
Scott, if you want to go ahead and flip back, and I will.
That was cool.
Thank you, sir. So McKinley, we kind of had the outside portion. I wanted to show you guys what we did inside the building as well. So we have the new addition, which includes our multipurpose and gym facility. We have 4 new classrooms, we have offices, and then we have the new parking and drop-off lanes there, as well as the playground. Once you go inside, we did drop ceilings in almost all of the classrooms. The kitchen has gotten a complete revamp. We had new casework installed, and we upgraded some bathrooms. So you can see the top right-hand picture is what the old ceiling used to look like. The bottom one right below that is the new drop ceiling with the LED lights.
Sweet.
Makes a huge difference. The casework that you can see in the lower left hand or lower right-hand corner, and new cabinetry or new countertop. The furniture that came in, McKinley is one of the buildings that we did furniture in this summer as well. So they got new furniture that just went in last week. Teachers are very excited to be able to move that around their room right now. Let's see here. If you guys have ever been in the building at McKinley, there was a lot of green tile all over the building. All of that green tile is now gone. It's been painted either a white or a gray. So the 2 right-hand pictures are the kitchen prior to paint and after paint. The new dishwashing station and kitchen equipment is going in as we speak. So it should be done by the end of this week. You can see on the lower left-hand corner the new dishwasher, which will make things a lot easier when you're running 530-some students through that building. The hallways with the green tile has also all been replaced with white. The lockers were painted purple as well, and I guess I forgot to put that picture in there, but I'll get to that with a different one. So at the Early Learning Center, we had the playground outside. Inside, we had the addition of 7 new bathrooms. That was shot yesterday, so as we're getting ready to finalize our punch list, huge bathrooms for the kids, very nice addition to that. We added a secure entrance to the front of that building, so as people come into the building, they'll have to get keyed in to the foyer and then enter the office before getting keyed into the building. So adding to the security of that building. They also got new furniture, new lunch tables. At Madison, we had the parking with the 17 new spaces. Their lockers and hallways got painted as well, so the purple lockers it looks really nice in that building and throughout the accent pieces. They also got new furniture in their building, and then you can see one of our new smart board TVs has been placed in that building. Madison is done. Grant is almost done with those new smart boards that you guys allowed the tech department to get. So we're getting pretty close to being wrapped up with a couple of those buildings and hope to have more this next week. At Grant, again, they were a building that got new furniture as well. We also tiled the cafeteria and gym, added new carpet throughout the gym and the main office and the library, painted the lockers in the hallways. Mulberry, again, we tiled their gym and we put carpet in their library and their offices, painted the lockers. They got new furniture as well. At West Middle School was our smallest project this year. We just upgraded a bathroom. But if you talk to Chris Nienhaus, he's extremely excited about this bathroom upgrade. It smells much better.
Yellow is a bold decorating choice in the bathroom.
Yeah, fair. But again, these were those really ugly tiles, like the green and multicolored tiles in those bathrooms. So those got repainted, new fixtures. And MHS, so we had, we had a number of things that we did at MHS. So we worked on the tennis courts, we had the gym, the pool, the workroom. We did stuff with the Muskie Locker, Bag of Blessings building. We're doing the STEM edition. We also did some Bruner Field work, and then we had the handicap parking work. So the gym, this is the new gym. It's been painted throughout, sanded down completely, new paint throughout the floor. Looks really nice. The addition of the M in the middle, I think, really makes it pop. So if you look where the home of the Muskies is up there, that used to be those dark wood paneling. That is completely gone, all down to the brick now. Let's see, in the pool, new bleachers and a new diving board were put in, new paint on the walls. It looks really nice if you haven't been in there. Bag of Blessings room that our special education department at the high school helps organize, gives out about 220 bags of food a week to needy or to children in the elementary level. So they were to where that blue carpet ends. That was the extent of their room. So we virtually doubled the size that they have to work with, which enables them to do a lot more with their resources. This also will tie right in to where our Muskie Locker sits. So those two rooms are right next to each other now, which makes it a little bit easier to coordinate responsibilities. We have the new stalls at the handicap stalls at the back. And then what our tennis courts used to look like to what they look like now, and then again, what they'll look like in about a week will be a huge improvement. It's important, as you guys think, you guys have done a great job, and I really appreciate you investing in the facilities as we try to draw people to the community. I think that's a huge aspect of what we need to do here. So, Bruner Field, we also did some work. Bruner Field looks tremendous. I don't know if you've had a chance to take in a baseball game this summer, but if you do have a chance to get down there, the new facilities, the upgrades have looked tremendous. Our new district facilities guy did a great job with that.
Ryan, could I just quickly mention on that? We were selected second best stadium in our conference this year.
Wow.
We would have not have gotten selected in previous years. And we also were able to host a sub-state game because of the quality of our field. And so it made a big difference, like Ryan said. It was,
huge difference.
Yeah, huge difference.
The workroom inside the high school, this was a part of the STEM edition. So we retiled, did a new wall, put some windows in pass-throughs between offices. Really brightens that facility up. So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier. Underneath on the top left-hand picture where the Hall of Honor sign is, That actually will be cut out, and that will be one of the new entrances into the STEM wing. Where the purple background is will be the new trophy case that was in its place. The lower left-hand corner will be the fire doors that go into that commons area as well as out into the STEM center. You can see where we tore out the front of the building on the top right-hand picture, and then the foundations and footings that are going in as the building goes out. I believe that is my last slide, if I planned it correctly, and it is. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have, and I understand completely if you don't have any.
Do you want to just tell them about the high school as far as how the traffic's going?
Oh, yeah, so in talking to Terry and the high school staff, we felt it would be best served if we tried not to alter the traffic pattern in August. So the front of the building will maintain a one-way traffic flow for this year. In the back of the building where that grassy area is where the storm shelter will go, as of right now, that's two-way traffic. And it'll maintain two-way traffic until we start construction on the storm shelter. Once we start construction on the storm shelter, that section of road will close down, but we'll still maintain access from the other end of the building. So if you wanted to get to the back of the building, once that storm shelter goes in, you'll have to come in the front of the building, go around the parking lot, and then enter that through the back side of the building. Less than convenient, but with the time frame that we had, altering the complete traffic pattern around the high school was not, I think, in our best interest. I have Martin and Whitaker is going to do a traffic study for us to make sure that as we transition to two-way traffic around the entire building, that we're doing it appropriately.
So if you come in from the Bonnie Drive.
Bonnie Drive, yep.
Exit.
Correct.
Or entrance, and you want to head towards the tennis courts?
Yes. So as of right now, it doesn't change your traffic pattern at all. You come in Bonnie Drive and go straight through the back of the building to the tennis courts, park in that parking lot. Once that storm shelter goes in, you'd have to get to the tennis courts from the front of the building.
So you
wouldn't be
go
able to,
around.
yeah.
Okay.
But it is two-way back there, right?
It is two-way
So you have
back
to
there,
stay in the
yes.
right lane, you can't.
Correct, yeah, you have to stay in the right lane.
At you back there.
This is gonna help us, like, as many students as we have that transition from the high school to the Van Heck Center on a daily basis, we felt that it was in the best interest, we have to do something different with the traffic pattern. So that was one of the things about closing that section down when we do the storm shelter, should create a pretty safe environment for our kids to exit the building to the Van Heck Center and to the storm shelter.
But will it be closed down permanently then?
Yes.
Oh, once it closes, it's closed.
Once it's closed, so
Oh,
So I can't go back out?
not after.
I will,
it closes.
if you guys want, I can sit down and I'll draw a map of what this actually looks like as we complete the construction so that you guys have a better idea of that.
I would also suggest that Mr. Hoganson send out a map of what it looks like, because I could not understand what was going on exactly.
I got the
reading
letter
email
today as well, so yeah.
So it would have been nice to have a picture in there
Okay.
explaining.
Yep.
We can
like
do that.
what
for
the
you,
temporary
absolutely.
solution is, and then I guess I would wait on the permanent one maybe, I
Right.
don't know. But don't
No,
confuse me.
we can definitely do that. We can put some graphics out. There's not a problem with that.
Yeah.
A good way to visualize when that shelter goes in with that road, it'll become more of an access road in the back, and you'll be able to go all the way up to the handicap parking. So you'll be able to
From
go.
Bonnie Drive? sorry?
Yes, yeah, and
So you'll drive in front of the concession stand?
No, so
No, no,
once the concession,
no,
you will
once the
not be able to
concession stand.
enter that section from Bonnie Drive at all. Now, when we change it to two-way, you'd be able to go around the building and come in that other side.
Yeah, you'd have to go all the way around.
Right, yes.
To get to the handicap
Yeah,
parking.
yeah.
Correct.
What it will take care of when they get to the shelter is the concern you've had, Aaron, about
To the Van Heck
the
Center.
Van Heck Center. You won't see cars going 40 miles per hour, it'll be a lot safer.
Right,
Right.
including it should limit that back parking lot during school day to school employees, our maintenance staff, and deliveries, basically. So you shouldn't have people coming through that back of the building when school's in session.
Good.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ryan. little discombobulated. All right. So the next item on our agenda, sorry, when we take this out of order, then I have to rethink, is our action or possible action items. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the director so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. Those items are minutes, the employment recommendations, all those that were left that we did not previously cover, bills and claims, special education contract, Genesis Health System EAP contract, the Muscatine Community College Connections Agreement, the dietitian consultant agreement, and minutes, and et cetera. What are the wishes of the board?
Make a motion to approve all that.
Second.
Easiest motion of the night. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion?
Madam President, was that, who did the second?
Give it to John.
Thank you.
John,
Okay, thank you.
sorry. I heard multiple voices and I figured they were
catch
gonna
it.
rock, paper, scissors.
Randy's not here. I don't know where he
Yeah,
went.
I caught him when he left, thank you.
Okay.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, and the motion carries. All right, that jumps us to item 6J, I believe, which is to approve the Muscatine Community School District handbook. You had two links in your board book. One was one was to the full book, and one was to the changes. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the changes made to, it's been motioned to approve the handbook.
Yes.
Sorry, not just the changes. Is there any further discussion on the handbook? All those in favor of approving the handbook for the coming year, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And the motion carries. Jerry, I didn't even give you a chance if you had anything you wanted to add to that item. I'm so sorry.
All the changes were primarily just housekeeping changes.
Okay. The next item is to approve the agreement of service with the Unity Healthcare for one full-time nurse. And I bet you do have
Yeah,
some information to share.
Yeah, we do. This is a little bit like the Family Navigators. We're partnering or contracting with Unity Point for this. We're not sure what we're going to absolutely need for nursing next year when we go to a single, after this year, we go to a single middle school. So this allows us to have additional nursing support without having to take on an employee.
Sounds good.
Well, I move to approve the agreement of service with Unity Healthcare for one full-time nurse.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agreement of service with Unity Healthcare for a full-time nurse. Is there any other discussion? Unity and Public Health have certainly been great partners with the district
They
in
really
their
have
area of
been.
expertise, and I'm grateful for that.
And they can bring some things to the table because of their position with Unity Point that we can't access otherwise. So it's really nice to have that additional support.
Agree. All right, all those in favor of the agreement of service with Unity Healthcare for one full-time nurse, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is to approve the orchestra instrument package. This is from West Music, and it's in the amount of $55,554.79.
Move to approve.
Second.
Jerry, do you want to give any?
These are going to, we have some of the largest numbers in fifth and sixth grade band and orchestra than we've ever had, which is great. This money will come out of the fine arts renovation budget. So we're gonna have to be a little bit under budget to take care of that, but this is a good thing, especially with the number of kids we have.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, Nathan, did you move to approve?
I did.
Okay.
Toby seconded.
I got Toby, but I didn't get Nathan. All right, is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the orchestra instrument purchase, please signify by saying aye.
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 And the opposed? And the motion carries. The next item is to approve the release of the request for proposal, the RFP for the superintendent's search firm. And I believe everybody has seen, received a copy of that. Does the board have anything that they wanted added? Have you had a chance to review it? Do you feel good about it?
I thought it was very thorough.
Yes.
Thank you. It was
I like
very
the
good.
timeline, getting that up front and dealt with quickly.
Okay. And just as a point of notice, the point of contact on for the RFP information, all of that will go through our board secretary. So we appreciate you taking on that. All other duties as deemed necessary. We appreciate that. So what are the wishes of the board on that RFP?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the RFP for proposal. Jerry, do you have anything you need to add to that?
I don't think so. If approved, we'll get those out in the next day or so. And it likes that Lisa is the point of contact. This is probably the only involvement I'll have in the process of developing the RFP. So at this point on, it will be a board-driven operation, and but I thought it would be helpful to get the board started with the RFP. So,
And since we're not saying a whole lot about this, if someone at home wanted to look at this, they could get it online, the board book, see this.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it'll be online once we get it posted
Okay.
in our RFP section on our
Okay.
website.
On the
Yep.
district website.
Good question, Mary. And Jerry, I appreciate you putting that together and working through that quickly. There will be some important next steps for the board. With a motion on the table, all those in favor to approve the request for proposal, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. The last item we have under our action items is for the third and final reading on policy 201.4, and that is elections to the board. This will be our third time, as it says, in seeing this, so hopefully no surprises to anyone. What are the wishes of the board?
So moved.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the final reading on policy 201.4, elections to the board. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. Under discussion and information, our next item is May financials. Tom, I think that's all you.
Yeah, I don't have any comments unless there's any questions from the board about the May financials.
Anybody have any questions for Tom? All right. That takes us to our announcements for the evening, and there's quite a list, so I'll just quickly read through these. August 14th, our new teachers will report. August 19th is our teacher quality in-service. August 20th is our super in-service for all staff. And a note that all of our buildings will be closed from 8 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. because everyone will be at the super in-service. August 21st and 22nd, all teachers will report. August 23rd is the first day of school for grades 1 through 9, and that's New Muskie Day for grade 9. August 23rd is also a staggered start for half of our pre-K, kindergarten, and kindergarten students. The other half of those students in that staggered start their first day will be August 26th. And then on August 26th, all students, grades 1 through 12, should be in school.
If you see anybody that's not, tell them to get there.
Send them that way. And August 26th will also be the first day for acceptance of school board nomination papers. And those can be delivered to our board secretary at the board office.
They have to come to me.
That's the only option. All right. So that's the only option. You can take them there, or you can take them to the board office. We also have, it was the only option. We also have, September 2nd is Labor Day. There's no school. And then our next meeting will be September 9th. We'll be back here in City Hall at 7 p.m. One other date that I heard Becky mention that I want to make sure that we include is tomorrow, Tuesday, August 13th, from 4 to 6 p.m. in the back parking lot of MHS is the mobile food pantry. Can I call it that? So for families in the community that have a need, there's no pre-work, no paperwork, just show up, and there will be some things to be shared.
And that starts at 4:30.
Oh, at 4:30.
Right.
4:30 to 6, but that's tomorrow, Tuesday, August 13th. Thank you for that. Okay. Are there any other announcements for the good of the cause? It was a long meeting tonight, probably one of the tougher ones I think that we've had as a board. Some great data information to dig through and some tough decisions to make. So I thank my peers for having good conversation and working through doing what we feel is best for our students. And thank you for all the data and information that was provided to the board. That's helpful. If no one has anything else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you.